Every single day, somewhere on Earth, a container falls into the ocean. Not one. Not two. On average, more than 5 every single hour. Inside these boxes could be anything. Sneakers. Medicine. Toys. Cars. Sometimes even things no one is allowed to talk about. They vanish without a splash anyone sees. No alarm. No warning. Just a quiet slip into black water, thousands of miles from land. You would think a floating steel box just sinks and disappears forever. But the real story is far stranger than that. Most people imagine it simply: a container falls off a ship, it fills with water, and it drops straight to the ocean floor. End of story. But that's not what happens. In reality, some containers don't sink for hours. Some don't sink for days. A few have been found floating, almost undamaged, months later, thousands of kilometers from where they fell. And what happens after they disappear is even harder to believe. Because a single falling box sets off a chain of events involving physics, chemistry, biology, and human survival, all happening in a place most of us will never see. A cargo ship, taller than a 20-story building, is cutting through the middle of the Pacific Ocean. No land in sight. Just water in every direction, for as far as the eye can see. On its deck, stacked 9 containers high, sits enough cargo to fill hundreds of trucks. Then the sea shifts. A wave rolls in from the side, not huge, not dramatic, but the ship tilts just enough. For 1 second, physics takes over. And a stack of containers, each one weighing as much as a school bus, begins to slide. Steel groans against steel. Locking pins the size of a human arm snap under pressure most engineers assumed would never be reached. And then, in complete silence beneath the roar of the storm, the first container goes over the side. On the bridge, an officer watches it happen in real time on a deck camera, completely unable to stop it. All he can do is log the time, the coordinates, and hope the count stays low. It rarely does. Engineers who design these ships expect some cargo loss. It's built into the math. Insurance companies even have a name for it: container loss at sea. But here's what shocked investigators when they started digging deeper. They expected containers to fall in a straight line, like a domino tipping over the edge. Instead, ships were losing 20, 50, sometimes over 100 containers in a single storm, all at once, all in seconds. One storm near the coast of Japan swept over 1,800 containers into the water in a matter of hours. Another incident in the North Pacific saw a single vessel lose more than 1,900 boxes during one violent crossing, an entire small town's worth of cargo, gone before sunrise. That's not an accident. That's a collapse. And once that many boxes hit the water, something happens that almost nobody expects. You would assume a steel box, packed with cargo, sinks immediately. But many containers are sealed just tight enough to trap air inside, the same air that keeps a submarine afloat. So instead of sinking, they float. Just below the surface. Almost invisible. Riding the waves like a shadow. Some have been tracked drifting for over a year, carried by currents across entire oceans, before finally taking on enough water to go under. And that's where the real danger begins. Sailors have a name for these things: container icebergs. Because just like an iceberg, 90% of the danger is hidden underwater. A 10-meter yacht can hit one of these half-submerged boxes at full speed and never see it coming. No radar picks it up easily. No lookout can spot a gray box bobbing an inch below dark water at night. There are documented cases of yachts crossing the Atlantic that simply vanished, no distress call, no wreckage, nothing. Investigators quietly suspect floating containers as the cause. One transatlantic sailor described hitting something unseen in open water at night: a dull thud, a shudder through the hull, and then nothing visible on the surface at all. He never found out what it was. He never needed to. Search teams later admitted that in cases like his, they weren't even looking for a shipwreck anymore. They were looking for a box the size of a truck, floating somewhere in an ocean bigger than every continent combined. But the story doesn't end with the danger on the surface. What happens beneath the waves is even more unbelievable. Eventually, water finds its way in. The trapped air escapes. And the container begins its final journey down. Here's where scientists expected something simple, a straight drop to the seafloor. What they found instead changed how we think about ocean pollution forever. As a container sinks past 100 meters, past 500, past 1,000, the pressure outside becomes crushing. At extreme depths, the water pressure is strong enough to crumple solid steel like a soda can. The box folds. It buckles. Sometimes it explodes open before it even reaches the bottom. And whatever was inside, spills out into complete darkness, kilometers below any human eye. Some containers, though, survive the fall almost completely intact, landing softly in deep mud, sealed shut, becoming time capsules on the ocean floor. Nobody knows exactly how many are still down there, waiting. In 1990, a ship called the Hansa Carrier lost 21 containers in a Pacific storm. 5 of them were packed with Nike sneakers, over 60,000 shoes. Oceanographers didn't see this as a disaster. They saw an opportunity. They tracked where the shoes washed ashore, Washington, Oregon, even Hawaii, and used the data to understand something scientists had struggled with for decades, how ocean currents actually move. That accidental spill helped build entire models of global ocean circulation still used today. A few years later, another ship lost thousands of bath toys, yellow ducks, blue turtles, green frogs, into the Pacific. Those toys are still being found on beaches decades later, scattered as far as the Arctic, giving scientists an unplanned, real-world experiment in tracking ocean drift that no research budget could have paid for. But not every spill tells a story this clean. Because some containers don't carry shoes or toys. Cargo manifests don't always match what's inside a box. Investigations have uncovered lost containers carrying batteries, industrial chemicals, pesticides, even radioactive material improperly declared. When these containers rupture on the seafloor, there's no cleanup crew. No hazmat team. No way to contain the spill. It happens 4,000 meters underwater, in total darkness, in a place humans have barely ever seen with their own eyes. Whatever leaks out simply becomes part of the ocean, forever. Environmental agencies have admitted, quietly, that they have no realistic way to track the true chemical footprint left behind by decades of lost cargo. The ocean simply absorbs it, and the evidence disappears with the container. And this is where the story turns from strange, to genuinely alarming. A small group of deep-sea researchers have made it their mission to actually find these lost containers. One expedition off the coast of California sent a robotic submersible down to nearly 1,300 meters, deeper than the Titanic wreck is from daylight, searching for a single lost container from a 2004 storm. They found it. Split open. Sitting on the seafloor like a metal coffin. And what they saw around it stunned them. Marine life had already begun colonizing the wreckage, strange white bacteria mats, deep-sea crabs, creatures rarely seen by human cameras. The container hadn't just polluted the ecosystem. It had become part of it. Researchers later found that the material inside, rubber car parts, in that case, was slowly leaching chemicals into the surrounding sediment, changing the composition of the seafloor in a measurable radius around the wreck. A single box, quietly reshaping a small patch of the deep ocean, one molecule at a time. The lead researcher on that dive later said something that stuck with everyone on the team, that they had gone looking for garbage, and instead found a brand new, tiny ecosystem that had never existed before humans put it there. Here's the number that puts everything into perspective. Since large-scale container shipping began, an estimated 10,000 containers are lost at sea every single year. That's not a rare accident. That's an entire hidden industry of loss happening constantly, right now, while you're watching this. Nobody sees it. No news channel covers it. It happens in the middle of oceans that most of us will never cross. Multiply that number across decades of global shipping, and you get a staggering estimate, possibly hundreds of thousands of containers currently resting on ocean floors around the planet, most of them never mapped, never recovered, never even reported publicly. An entire invisible city of steel boxes, spread across the deep sea. For the sailors on these ships, it's not just cargo, it's survival. Crew members have described the sound of a container stack collapsing during a storm as a train crashing on steel, loud enough to hear over hurricane winds. Some crew have been injured, even killed, by shifting cargo during rough seas. Captains are trained to make a brutal decision in seconds, risk the ship trying to save the cargo, or cut the load loose to keep everyone alive. Almost every time, they choose the crew. One retired captain recalled standing on the bridge during a Pacific storm, watching through the window as an entire stack broke loose, container after container disappearing into white-capped waves, and feeling, in that moment, utterly powerless against the size of the ocean. He said the worst part wasn't the storm itself. It was the silence afterward, doing the count, realizing exactly how much had been swallowed by the sea in less than a minute. Which means somewhere in the ocean, right now, there's a captain who made that same choice, and a box that's still falling. As shipping has grown, so has the danger. Modern container ships now stack boxes higher than ever before, sometimes 11 containers tall. Higher stacks mean more weight leaning further from the ship's center, which means more instability in rough seas. Climate scientists have found something even more concerning. As ocean storms grow more intense with a warming climate, the frequency of these container losses is climbing every year. More extreme weather. Taller stacks. More cargo in the water. Shipping companies have started investing in smart locking systems and sensors that detect shifting cargo before a collapse begins, but even the newest technology can't fully outmatch a rogue wave hitting a ship at the wrong angle, at the wrong moment, in the middle of nowhere. The hidden graveyard on the ocean floor is growing faster than at any point in history. After a string of high-profile losses, maritime investigators began asking a question nobody had seriously asked before: how many containers are actually out there, and where exactly do they go? The answers were embarrassing. Shipping companies weren't required, for decades, to publicly report exact numbers or locations of lost cargo. Many losses went completely unrecorded outside internal insurance paperwork. It took major spills, and mounting pressure from environmental groups, before international shipping regulations finally began requiring better tracking and reporting. Even now, experts admit the true number of lost containers is likely far higher than official records show, because the ocean, unlike land, rarely gives back its evidence. Some countries have started experimenting with satellite tracking tags fitted to high-value containers, hoping to finally answer a question that has gone unanswered for half a century: not just how many are lost, but exactly where every single one of them ends up. So what really happens when a container falls into the ocean? It doesn't just sink and disappear. It floats like a ghost ship, invisible and deadly, waiting to be struck by anyone who crosses its path. It sinks into a world with no light and pressure strong enough to crush steel. It spills its contents into an ecosystem we barely understand, sometimes helping scientists map the ocean itself, sometimes poisoning it in silence. And it becomes something new entirely, a strange, man-made reef, sitting in the dark, slowly becoming part of the very ocean it fell into. A single lost box connects human error, ocean physics, hidden ecosystems, and decades of unseen consequences, all from one moment on a ship's deck that lasted less than 5 seconds. We've mapped Mars in more detail than we've mapped our own ocean floor. Right now, thousands of steel boxes are scattered across the deep sea, holding secrets, shoes, chemicals, and stories we will probably never fully uncover. Every rubber duck found on a distant beach, every sneaker washed up far from home, every strange chemical trace scientists still can't explain, all of it is a quiet signature of something that fell, unnoticed, into the biggest, darkest, least explored place on our planet. The next time you see a cargo ship gliding calmly across the horizon, remember this. Somewhere beneath that same calm water, an entire hidden world is quietly growing, one lost container at a time.